Yeah, when I started, it was tape to tape, which obviously, you're talking editing in real time, sometimes longer. So yeah, moving to nonlinear editing is the amount and the speed in which we could edit things together was almost game changing. And you could have stuff on the air. I mean, I remember back in the old days, we would literally have, for newscasts, we would have a box of tapes, and the tape guru, would have to run those tapes upstairs because I don't know why we put stuff upstairs, but they'd run upstairs. And sometimes it was, they were coming up on that story and you were handing the guy a tape and he had to put it in and make sure it was cute, you know. And now there's none of that. There's, you edit a piece, you hit a button and it's ready for air. And it's just, it's a dramatic change in the workflow.
Yeah. How do you think, and this may be harder to quantify, how do you think people in this market have responded to the way the industry has evolved from the original days of here's a placard card,
Yeah.
maybe we're playing some records or doing something like that, until today? I mean, 75 years is a long time.
For sure.
Our piece of it's like the last quarter century in the industry, but how do you feel like the viewer experience has changed in that time?
Well, and actually, I mean, for me, the biggest change that I've seen was the internet, obviously. That side of digital changed everything. And obviously on top of that, not just websites and social media things have changed more since the early 2000s than, I mean, I shouldn't say than ever before, but it has absolutely changed the way we do everything. I mean, it's fundamentally changed the way that TV stations, media entities communicate. It changes the way we disseminate the information. It changes the way people consume that information. We're no longer doing newscasts. We're all, not we. You're no longer doing newscasts. You're 24/7 news operations. Something happens, you have to get it out there. You can't wait till 5 o'clock. You can't wait till 11 o'clock. And that's a huge change. And I think that for most people, I think that's great because, even though it may hurt the newscasts a little bit, if something big is happening, I want to know it's happening now. And I'm getting it on X, on Facebook, even though Facebook's falling off a little bit. But I can remember a time when I was working in a local newsroom, and I said to my news director, we need to be on Facebook. And he's like, I don't know if there's really I don't know if we need to. And then, it wasn't too much longer that Facebook exploded. And it just, not only the dissemination of information, but the talent, the ability for people to communicate and for your viewers to comment and give you stories. And it became much more of a two-way street. You're not just putting the stuff out there people are consuming, but they're also giving you information, giving you feedback. I think that's really changed everything for the TV broadcast industry.
Interviewing you is a unique opportunity for this special because you didn't work for us. You worked for the other two. You didn't work for us. But we pay attention to what each other do.
Sure.
And so what are your impressions of WDTN? And you started college here in 91, so you would have had some awareness at that time of us dating through until right now. And so what have your impressions been about WDTN in these 3 decades?
Yeah, I mean, DTN's always been solid. When I was at HIO, we were often battling with DTN over the ratings. In my later years, I was at the ABC Fox affiliate, which was, I think they were kind of last to the market, and they've struggled over the years. So, but yeah, again, it was 2 is very solid, very. It seems like it seems like as a station, as an ownership group, they kind of know what they're doing and they do it. They're very committed to what they do. They're committed to the community, which I think is huge. Carl's Coats for Kids, things like that. That's stuff that I think when you talk about getting involved in the community and people, being committed to watching a broadcast and feeling like they have a relationship with that, stuff like that, the community outreach, Booker's Beat, things like that is I think things that viewers remember to this day.
And I think 2 and 7 both had something that maybe 24/7 has struggled a little bit, which is longtime faces.
Legacies, yeah,
Legacy
yeah,
people. Cheryl
yeah,
McHenry at 7,
for sure.
obviously. James Brown's been there a long time. Letitia Perry's been there a long time. For us, Brian Davis,
Yep.
41 years in. Mark Allen, until he just stepped away and retired
Sure.
a couple of years ago. He had a quarter century in this market. People could mark the time by Mark and Brian.
And even
on the
like
set.
even Omar, I mean, you go back and Martian, and it just there's definitely some consistency, and that's important, and unfortunately, when you work for a station that's struggling a little bit, there seems to be like a need for change. Like you can't do what everyone else is doing because you're never gonna get where they are. So you have to be different. So yeah, they don't have the consistency that the DTN and WHIO have had. So.
Can you speak to the impact that has for viewers when they look at somebody like a Brian Davis delivering the weather, who grew up here, who's been here for the better part of in his 5th decade now, or a Mark Allen on desk? Just the trust factor you're going to have with those people and what that can mean for viewership.
Yeah, I think when you grow up watching somebody, they really do become an authority figure, and in some places they almost become, you have Brian Davis telling you to take cover during a tornado, you're going to remember that, and you're going to tell people, and you're going to not only trust him, but it almost becomes like part of your family, And I think that was definitely the case back in the day when newscasts were appointment television. You wanted to watch the people that you trusted, to come into your house. But even more now with social media, I think that has helped open some doors. You're learning more about, Mark in the day, Mark Allen, Brian, you're learning more about their personal life, who they are as a person. They might respond to something you say, or they're in your Facebook feed, or your X feed, or Instagram, what have you. But I think that social media has definitely helped kind of bridge that gap a little bit. It definitely helps the viewers connect more with the talent, the personalities that they're watching every day.
We're sitting in this brand new studio because y'all just moved in here a semester ago. Leads me to my next question. And we touched a little bit about it already, but just the technological changes in this business. We talked a little bit about tape to tape going to nonlinear, but you showed somebody who would have directed a newscast in 1980 this, and they might think this is sorcery.
Yeah.
So just from robotic cameras, which we have, to this type of a thing, you and I date back enough to remember the TV of ago before it plugged into now. So just the technological change in this industry beyond the editing systems.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I do think obviously there's been a lot of technological changes over the years. You look at this thing, and I mean, it looks like a lot, but you remember the switches when we first started. They were, and it basically has changed some of the jobs. The TDs, the technical directors, used to have to mark scripts, and now they come in and they code the show. There's a lot more prep work for the directors, but to get through a show during the show, it should be easier. Now the only problem with technology is when things are computer based, sometimes computers crash, and I think we've all had an opportunity over the last few years where we're scrambling looking for a 3/4, or hey, do we still have that, tape to tape? But I think as the technology gets better, I feel like all that stuff happened a lot to us all at the beginning, but cameras moving on their own, but you don't see a lot of that anymore. Obviously the technology is getting better, and like everything, I mean, every generation is a little more, they work the bugs out, and I would say for most viewers, they would never, you basically want it to be seamless, going to new technology. You don't want the viewers to be like, hey, it didn't used to do that. Yeah. So, and I do think that it has become seamless. The new technology, we just work it in. Obviously, all the new sets we have. I know WDTN unveiled a set a couple years ago, and I mean, it's beautiful. There's all kinds of monitors, there's all kinds of stuff that whatever the producers and directors can come up with. It's just appealing, It's like we're all getting away from 2 anchors sitting behind a desk and throwing to video or a package. It's become a lot more creative, and I think that the new technology definitely helps foster that creativity. There's a lot of things you can do. I mean, I'm sure they haven't even scratched the surface of what they can do yet in some of these places because there's a learning curve. But I think it's awesome. There's so many opportunities to be creative and to showcase stories and to help with as you and I know, at the end of the day, storytelling is,
Yeah.
is what we do and what we should do. So there's a lot, video and audio that can take you places, but some of the, new bells and whistles we have can also help tell stories. So
Sure. As both you and Mr. Flint, who I spoke with a few minutes ago, you interact with the students really hands-on. Do you get a sense of the ones coming in now that they have a sense of the industry? How much of what, did they grow up watching local news? I mean, that's a struggle in this industry.
Sure.
Is attracting young viewers. Everybody would love that 18 to 49 demo.
Yeah.
That's where you make your money. That's one of the 18, especially. People traditionally aren't watching a lot of
For
news
sure.
at that age.
Yeah.
As the students come into a program here like UD, how versed are they, or how connected are they to the industry that they maybe want to work in?
I don't, I'd say for most, they're not that connected. I mean, they get what they need on their social media and they follow who they want to follow. Some people are, we have some news junkies, but I'd say for most young people, that's kind of not what they think about. But that's why we make sure that they learn about it. I try really hard because I'm also in charge of our internship program here. So I try really hard to get students to intern in newsrooms, not just here in Dayton, but in other places. We've had a lot of students over the last few years go into TV news production, a lot of producers. So I've been kicking around an idea for years to try to teach a news production because it's not, you went to OU?
I did.
So they do everything. That's kind of the broadcast, the TV broadcast journalism school
Yes.
Here locally, and it's just not what we do. But we try to give them a taste of that, and if they're interested, we're trying to get them internships or set them up. As you know, it's hard to find young people to get into producing.
Yes.
And videography too. I mean, so we teach them. We're kind of generalists here. We teach them. We try to teach them writing. We teach them how to shoot, how to edit, how to tell a story. We do a documentary class. So we try to give them all the skills they need, and obviously that can definitely lead to a career in broadcast journalism.
I think a news production class would be a genius idea.
Yeah.
Because you want to get a job in a better place right out of school, that's a place where you can, go.
Well, that's what I say. It's I'm always shocked when I was in your shoes, reaching out to young, I remember I went to a job fair in Kent State, and I was reaching out to the students. I'm like, hey, you want to come work for us? They're like, no, I got a job in Cleveland. How am I gonna compete with that?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it would give them some knowledge, like, hey, this is something you could do, and if you do it well, you can go to Chicago. You could be a manager. I mean, it's, as you know, a lot of producers, they
End
either
up as
keep
executive
producing.
producers and then right up through into the ranks.
Yeah. So
For sure.
I'd love to get more students interested in it because they don't even know what it is. For a lot of them, it's just something a producer. Because they think about movie, isn't that person that supplies the money to the, no, it's
That's
different.
The executive
Yeah,
producer
it's
movie.
different. It's different.
So, I guess the last question I have for you, and then I'll Joe chime in if he had anything. Just, you and I have seen a lot of change in our three decades in. Where do you think it goes? Because now we're not doing variety programs
Sure.
anymore. There's no more Ruth Lyons.
Yeah.
50-50 clubs. It's, it's local news or bust from here
Yeah.
on out for affiliate TV. Where do you think it goes?
I think that there's always going to be a place for local news. I know there's a lot of people like, oh, local news is dying, this, that, and the other. But I just think that the local news needs to be local. And that's the trick. We all have phones. We all know. We all get alerts when something big happens nationally. What we don't know about is what's going on in our schools, or we don't have people who are holding local governments accountable for, misspending money, things like that. And that's where local news really needs to be a watchdog, a local watchdog. So are we always going to be in I can see a time where there's not as much news on TV, and there's another, whether it's streaming or I don't know how that looks, but I think there's probably going to be a time where it's not as much appointment viewing as it used to be, as we all know. But you want to be there when people are looking for. So I don't know where that's going to go. But there's always going to be a need for local journalism, and it just needs to focus on the local part of that, and that's important. For years, I know you used to do sports too. So this is one that always stuck in my craw because I love sports. And I've heard so many consultants over the years say people don't care about sports. And I'm like, how are you asking the question? Because a good sports department should be telling stories about people. You know, they should be in the high schools. I don't want to see the Reds score and highlights. I can get that on my phone, you know, but stories about a local high school athlete who defeated, you know, beat the odds to do this, that, and the other. I want to see that story. I remember there's a guy, I think he played for Trotwood a few years ago, who didn't have legs.
Yeah.
His leg, and like, what an unbelievable story. You're telling me that somebody doesn't want to see that on TV? So yeah, it's all about storytelling, and I really think that there is definitely always going to be a place for local broadcast. It might look different, it might be delivered differently, consumed differently, but yeah, journalism's important.
I would agree.
Yeah, but the one other thing I was going to say is in terms of technology, and I meant to mention this earlier,
Sure.
And you talk about editing, switching, that thing, but the live views and the TV views, that really changed. I mean, you remember the days you had to fire up live trucks. They would never work, or you'd have to book satellite time. Now, the access the TV stations now have to going live, you know, I mean, you flip that thing on and you're live. Anywhere, and it's crazy. I mean, if you told me that was the way it was going 30 years ago, I would have drooled thinking of all we could do, but it's just, yeah. And the cell phones too. I mean, everyone's got a cell phone. I mean, and that has helped, obviously, news gathering so much, you know. I mean, as you know, it's like every time there's a storm, like, hey, send us some pictures, pictures or videos. So, you know, cell phones obviously have had a huge impact, but so has the technology that's allowed us, which is cell phone technology, the live views, that have allowed us to basically throw in a backpack and go live anywhere as long as the cell phone service is decent. So
LiveView has an app for the phone.
Yeah,
You can live view right through the phone.
Yeah, which is it's crazy. It's that was a huge game changer. And I remember just driving around in live trucks my last few years. I'm like, why do we have these things? And they're mobile edit stations. That's all they were because we were just using live views all the time. So.
Well, and then you get somewhere with satellite or with a microwave truck. Trees are too tall.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
buildings are
You
blocking,
can't put it
so,
up. There's wires.
there's
Yeah,
wires,
it's like,
yeah,
oh
yeah,
my
everybody has
gosh.
to watch the video, so look up and live. Yeah. How
Yeah.
many times did you watch Look Up and Live over the years? So.
And
Joe,
you're
did
in-
you
you're
ever
in
have
the-
to watch Look Up and Live?
No, I don't think I actually did.
Yeah, well, when
You're-
we redeploy those microwave trucks, you're gonna have to, because if you put the mast up on the wires, the truck explodes and you die.
We had somebody, we called him Sparky.
Oh.
He got, but yeah, you'd be back in engineering, like yelling, "Are we gonna have the shot or not?" You know. And now it's like, you know, it's instantaneous.
Or
It's
it
just
looks
crazy.
crappy, it's got, like,
Yeah,
junk.
yeah, exactly.
We do still have the engineers and the directors screaming about, "Are we gonna have the shot?"
Sure, yeah. But it's
It's just a
different.
different-
Yeah,
it's a different kind of screen.
it's not the producer in the engineering area.
It's
like,
why isn't our TV
yeah.
shut up yet? So, Joe, did you have anything you want to ask?
Yeah, sure. For the student, for the person watching this next month or next year, next 5 years from now, what do you want them to take away about broadcast television?
You know, the one thing that I try to tell our students is, you know, our ultimate job is to get students ready for careers. And as you know, there are careers in broadcast television. So, and they're good careers. And you can, if you can do certain things well, you can move up quickly and you can go to big cities and make decent money. You know, I think, like I said earlier, I think journalism is important. I think, you know, storytelling is important. Whether you go into TV or not, being able to tell a story, being able to write is always going to be important. Yeah, I just feel like, obviously without local broadcasting, it's really hard to hold authority figures accountable. It's hard to tell the stories, you know, obviously that aren't being told. I just feel like, you know, regardless of the way of the world, there's always going to be a place for broadcast journalism. And it's important, and it's you know, some people just get into it because they're like, it's a job, but it's for many of us that do it, it's a passion. I mean, you got to care about what you're doing. You know, you got to go out and find stories that you're passionate about and tell those stories. So, you know, I did it for 23 years, and I loved it up until the end. It was, something different every day. It was always, get a lot of wins for the little guy. That's a big part of it.
Well, the groups I talked to, I was telling them, if you're thinking of this as a job, you won't make it.
Yeah,
You will not make it.
Yeah.
This is, in the best of times, it's hard to do.
for sure.
Because people don't want to talk to
Yeah.
us and tell us things. At the best of times, it's hard to do. And if you're just coming to it as a job, do something else.
Yeah.
This is a career you have to be passionate about, or you will not make it.
There's going to be long hours. You're going to work some holidays.
Especially early in your career,
yeah.
you're working every
Yeah.
Christmas and Thanksgiving.
And I'd also say just be willing, and I say this pretty much about any job. Be willing to do anything. Don't ever say that's not my job. I mean, learn everything. So you'll be somebody that they depend on, they go to when they need somebody. So.
Absolutely.
I guess other than that, I mean, that was a really good way to end it, but
Yeah.
where do you think the next big leap in technology will be?
Oh,
Maybe for
geez.
broadcast. We talked about TV units, we talked about how the switchers have changed, and
Yeah.
cameras have even gotten smaller, but what do you think could be next?
Gosh, that's a good question. They're already doing kind of targeted advertising, aren't they? Like I said, I don't know how it looks, but I know that it's going to change. I think eventually we're going to get away from a 5 o'clock news, a 6 o'clock news. Where and how that looks, I'm not sure yet. But I mean, I know right now it's cheaper to produce a newscast than it is to put on syndicated. So there's obviously a money aspect to it. But I think that like an 11 o'clock news. When I was at another station, we did a 10 o'clock news, and our viewership was much higher. I mean, I think people's time. We don't have the. Our time is really important right now. Everyone's busy. Technology, and the internet and phones have helped in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways they also keep us distracted. And I think that it's going to be harder and harder moving forward to get people to stay up for an 11 o'clock news when there's so many other things they could be doing. So I don't know. I mean, I hate to say it, but I could see traditional newscasts going away for something more on demand. I don't know how that looks, and hopefully it stays relevant. I guess this relevancy is a big thing. Is like I said. I mean, digital, social media. You're getting a lot of what you need in real time. So waiting around for 6 o'clock for something, I think that's harder and harder to sell people on. But yeah.
I said to somebody yesterday, I wonder if this isn't a today or tomorrow thing, but not in the far too distant future. A newsroom like ours to survive, we're basically doing a Spectrum News 1 model, but where you're getting it on your phone all the time.
Oh yeah, like just a wheel where you just
it's a wheel, but we're always streaming.
Yeah.
And so if you want news at 2 in the morning, you go to the DTN app. It's there.
Yeah.
We got somebody doing it.
Yeah.
And you're doing like the ESPN News 4-hour blocks of an anchor.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if that's for the ones who want to survive and do it. That's how it's going to have to be, because you can play for all time zones then.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you could
for
still
sure.
include NBC content or AP content. It wouldn't just be all local, but you would be doing that. I mean, it would be more labor intensive in terms of hiring some folks and staying on that way. But maybe that's how we survive as an industry, is being always available.
Yeah. Well, and I heard you talk about this earlier with Roy. I think that you talked about sort of Phil Donahue and that format. I've heard before I left the business, I heard kicked around a few times in different places, we need to be more like Pat McAfee's show, and I'm like, that is a model that,
Yeah, it's really popular right now.
I mean, obviously sports is different than news, but I could see someone experimenting with that, doing more of a freewheeling, show like that instead of a very set. I mean, we're already getting away from the sets.
Yeah.
We're already trying to move our anchors and be more interactive and everything. So, maybe we just bust out of the box and just go to something that's less predictable.
Jim Cramer's been doing that on NSN or CNBC
Yeah,
for a while.
yeah.
With Mad Money,
Mhm.
where it's moving around.
Yeah.
He might smash coffee mug with the Mad
Yeah,
Gallagher
yeah.
style, but it's he still has guests and they
Yeah.
still have segments, but it's very loose form.
Yeah, because I mean, some TV news, it gets to be very formulaic. You have a rundown and people go in there, oh, well, you know, we have to do this here because this is how we do it, you know. But you know, I could see them kind of busting the molds and just trying to be a little more.
Somebody's gonna try it.
For sure, yeah.
And I don't know who that is or how well that will go.
Yeah.
So,
It's
because
coming.
viewership is older.
Yeah.
Yeah, news viewership is traditionally older. Are they gonna want that? Is the older viewership gonna want that McAfee style?
Yeah. Well, and also, but I mean, you get young people watching. They're
Yeah.
trying to. That's the tough part, is bringing the young people.
Yeah.
How do
Maybe that's the way
you
to
how
do
do you
it.
get them? Yeah.
Maybe that's
So.
the way to do that.